Hey everybody, my name is Tim Hepworth here with Fly Fishing Bover Outfitters and Thursday Night Live Fly Tying. I'm here to bring you another fly tonight through a quick tie. This is the foam is home stone. This is what that guy's gonna look like. There you go. All right, so we're tying on about a size 8 hook here. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our thread. We're gonna get started behind the eye. I'm using a UTC 140 because I'm tying with foam. I want a little thicker thread. And this one I'm just tying in brown just to kind of match, light tan brown, just to match the pattern itself. I'm gonna come back to just ahead of the hook point, get rid of that extra thread. I'm gonna go in and grab my rubber leg. Okay, I'm gonna match up the tips. Not that it's super important that they're matched. I'm gonna leave that little bit of a bow in the back here, and I'm gonna tie that in right on top of the hook shank, okay? Right on top, make sure I cinch it in so it's not going anywhere. Now I'm gonna pull up on it so that it stays right on top of the hook all the way back. And I'm gonna take this just to the top of the hook bend. And when I let go, I want them to splay out equally on both sides, just like that. I'm gonna maybe take one more wrap and then just make sure I got a nice thread base over top of the rest of it. And we're gonna go ahead and trim these right away. We're gonna trim them off roughly a hook length in length behind, somewhere in there. We'll leave those guys just like that. You can move them a little bit if they're not where you want them to be. Okay, the next thing I'm gonna do is we have provided in your kit just a little piece of kind of brownish gold colored floss. We're gonna take that in, we're gonna use this as a rib on this fly. So we're gonna go ahead and tie that in right where I left my thread, kind of pull on it so it stretches it out, and we're gonna take it right back in to where we left those back legs. Okay, we're just gonna let that hang there. Again, from your kit, you've got some foam. What I've done is I've gone and cut some strips. This one is actually gonna be palmered up the hook, so we're not gonna use a super thick piece of foam, and I've tied it into, I've cut it into a little bit of a point, just so that when I tie it in here, it's a little thinner at the front, okay? So I'm gonna just lay that right where I had left my thread. I'm gonna tie down that tag, make sure it's good and secure. You want this secure because we're gonna pull some tension on it, okay? I'm gonna go in there and trip out that little end so I don't have a bump there. And now I'm gonna advance my thread all the way forward to about the 2/3 way mark up. And that's where I'm gonna end up leaving my foam. Okay, so now I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna pull on it pretty tight. I'm pulling on it hard just to get it to start wrapping and kind of thin out near the back so we create a nice taper. Okay, nice and thin, and then basically just touching wraps with that foam as we move forward. And as I move forward, I release some of that tension. So it's a little thinner at the back, and as I relieve tension off it, it builds a little bit bulkier moving forward. Once I get to up here, I'm gonna slide that thread back, and I'm gonna tie it right down. Make sure you get some good wraps in here so this also doesn't come apart. Then I'll go in there and I'll trim that out. There we go, and then just make sure that that end is really bound down, nice and tight. We can wrap back a little bit because we're gonna want that full third to work with in the front, so we'll leave it about there. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna grab that floss that I had, I'm gonna kind of stretch it out again, and I'm just gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna palmer it forward, and this just is gonna give us some visible segmentation to kind of mimic what that stonefly's body is gonna look like. Come forward to my thread. The whole time I was pulling tension on that. Stretches it out, kind of thins it a bit. There we go. So you can see like that's gonna appear like that. Wrap that down. Now we've got a little bit of an underwing material you can pull out of your kit. It almost feels like a coffee filter, but it's a little bit shinier material, okay? What we're gonna do is we're gonna cut a strip that's just a little bit narrower than the distance from the hook point to the fly, okay? And just a nice strip. We're gonna cut it down and we're gonna shape it a little bit to tie in as our underwing. So I'm just cutting it off this patch here. So I got a piece that's about that wide, okay? And all I'm gonna do is I'm going to round the edges a bit. That's gonna be the back. Same thing, come around the edges again. So I'm left with something that looks similar to that, okay? Now I'm gonna lay that down so that it extends just out over the back of the body, and I can lay it down so I can see just behind the edge of the body like so, okay? And I come in here and tie that down. Make sure it's tied down really well, and it's gonna sit like that. That's our underwing, okay? Make sure I got some thread wraps down. Then I'll go ahead and I'll cut off what I didn't use. Make sure that stays up on top and doesn't turn. Then secure all of it down. And I'm gonna push those thread wraps back to that third way mark again, because I need that full third in the front. Like so. Go one more further. And we want that wing to sit pretty tight against the body. Just like so. From the underside is what it looks like. Next thing here, go ahead and grab out of your kit. We've got some white hair. We're gonna take about half of that clump that you have there, and we're gonna tie this in as an underwing, okay? So I suggest just trying to line up the tips. You can stack this in a hair stacker as well, but they're close enough for my liking. I'm gonna go in here and just clean out all the under stuff, get that out of there. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna lay this right down on top of that underwing, and I want it to extend basically right out exactly to where that underwing was again. And as I take some hard thread wraps on here, it's gonna flare a little bit, so it's gonna shorten those up a bit. So I pulled down hard once, then I'm gonna go again, and I'm gonna work my thread kind of forward through some of that hair so that it really locks it in, and then we'll trim the rest out. So I pulled down hard, you can see how that hair flared a little. I like that. I'm gonna come in here and trim this all out. And then just take thread wraps forward. We're gonna create a nice little taper to the front of the eye. Just like so. And that's where you should be left, okay? Kind of the last piece here, before we put in our legs, we're gonna build the front head. So this is what we call a bullet head, okay? So I'm gonna bring my thread all the way down to the eye. I'm gonna take another piece of foam that I've cut into a small strip about the same size as the last one. I'm gonna just take the corners off. So I've got a bit of a tie-in point, okay? And now I wanna tie this in nice and tight right behind the eye. So I just held that there, tying in that foam, leaving a little bit of a bump there because I'm gonna really sink that in. And I just flip it up and make sure that I've got thread all the way back to the eye because I want to create the perfect bullet that I can. And once I have it done on the top, I'm gonna flip it over. I'm gonna do the same thing with another piece of foam on the bottom. We're gonna tie it in exactly the same way. Trim and trim. Come right back to the eye. Really snug that in. Tug it down. Once I got that really in there where I want it to, then I can bring my thread back just a little bit. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold this back and tie it in, but I want a little bump in the front and a bigger bump behind it. So I'm gonna have brought that back just a smidge, create my first bump, like so, by folding it back, flip it over, do the same thing, a little bump first. Now you can see how that bullet's starting to shape. Bring my thread underneath, and now I'm gonna take a thread wrap. I'm actually gonna go in here and just trim out this underfoam a little bit, just so it's not in the way. And now when I come through, I'm gonna create a second bump right where I left the hair and the wing and everything else. Just like so. So you got your little bit bigger bump there. My under one turned just a little on me, so I'm gonna pull it back. You want your thread to be all the way back to that where you want to tie in before you really make any moves. So I'll just do this one at a time. Pinch that down. Prevent it from spinning on you. Then do the same thing on the top one. You're left with that. Now on the bottom, we're gonna go in and we're gonna trim that out right up tight. And on top, we're gonna create a little bit of a shape here. So I'm gonna come in, cut at a diagonal once, come in the other way, cut again, and that leaves us with that little shape. And that basically all that does is hold that hair down so it's not all flared out. And now that we're there, what we're gonna do is the last piece of the puzzle, which is our legs. So you got some black legs in your kit there. What I want you to do is go ahead, we're gonna tie a simple overhand knot in the back edge of the leg. So I'm gonna pull that tight. Okay, so let's point it like that. Now I'm gonna tip that so it's slightly pointed in towards the fly, like so. And I'm gonna get that bump to extend almost to the back of the fly. I'm gonna lay that thread, or sorry, that leg against there, catch it with the thread, and then I can adjust it a little if need be. So we got that guy sitting there. Now I'm gonna do the exact same thing on the other side. With the other leg, Tie another overhand knot, pull it tight, tip it in towards the fly, tug it down, and from here I'm going to whip finish right where it's sitting. Go 1 or 2. Go one more time. These legs can be in the way, so just hold them out. Trim out your thread. All we're gonna do is cut the legs to length and we're ready to grok. So I'm gonna pull them both forward so I know I got them where I want them. Size is kind of a preference thing. I like them to be somewhere about there. And the back legs, I'm just gonna trim them up just a little, just so they're equal in length beyond that little bump. And there you go, guys. That is your Foam is Home stone. Great little pattern. Give it a go. If you want some more information on this fly, go ahead and tune into episode 2 of Thursday Night Live. That's season number 4. Take care.